We begin with news about Putin.
В этом смысле вся Украина наша.
All of Ukraine belongs to us. Every place where a Russian soldier sets foot is our land. But today, those feet are not running to conquered lands. They are running to shelters meters below ground in their own country. We move on to Zelensky.
This war is not about the land and not about territories for him. It's about our sovereignty and about our independence.
Because he doesn't just talk, he does what he says. The Russians say Ukraine cannot defend itself. But the daily results of our army, the deep strikes of our special forces, are proof that Ukraine is not only defending itself, but striking the enemy in its lair. Remember, we opened a file for you in December. We said, Russia is quietly preparing shelters and will spend $1.7 billion. At that time, the gravity and seriousness of the situation was not fully understood by the world public. We even relayed the Russian governor's message to his people to hide in closets and cupboards. Many thought this was a regional measure. But today, February 13th, 2026, we have the Russian Federation's official confession. The Russian government has decided to restore more than 20,000 shelters across the country. You heard right. Exactly 20,000 shelters. This is not a drill. This is a leader who says, everything is going according to plan. Actually telling his people, take care of yourselves, the apocalypse is coming. But the scariest part of this story is not the shelters. The real question is, with no one left to work in Russia, with a shortage of 12 million workers, who will Putin build these shelters for? The answer will shock you. Afghan and Indian migrant workers. Today on MrWARLOG, the Kremlin's underground panic. The Flamingo missiles that hit Russia at midnight. The 80,000 Russian citizens freezing to death. And how the Russian people are preparing for war in poverty. First, let's ask the big question. Why did the Kremlin make this massive shelter decision right now in mid-February 2026 and not in 2024 or 2025? Why now? The answer is very simple. Because Russia's Ukraine doctrine has collapsed. Not just the front line. Russia's heartland, its industrial heart, is under fire. Look at what happened last night. The images and reports on social media. They prove how Ukraine's new generation Flamingo cruise missiles overcame Russian air defenses. A total of 6 Flamingo missiles were detected in Russian skies throughout the night. These are not mosquito bites, but massive missiles. Russian radars could only track them. Where did these missiles go? Look at these images shared by Ukrainian social media users. Flames rising from strategic points in Russia. It shows that Putin's air defense systems have been turned into a sieve. According to Charter 97 reports, critical infrastructure facilities, factories, and logistics centers in Russia's interior regions are being hit one after another. The decision to build 20,000 shelters was made to drown out the sound of these explosions. The Russian Ministry of Emergency Situations can no longer deny it. If the Russian military is winning everywhere, why are civilians in Moscow and St. Petersburg preparing to go underground? The answer is simple. The war is no longer just in Ukraine. The war has entered the homes, bedrooms, and shelters of Russian citizens. We used to say, they're cleaning out the basements in Leningrad. That was a regional measure. Now, every governor from Vladivostok to Kaliningrad has received this order. Dig! And the scale of fear isn't limited to conventional bombs. While civil shelters are being built, the Kremlin has also sounded the alarm to protect nuclear weapons. Russia, which unveiled its prototype by the end of 2024 and is now mass-producing the KUBM mobile shelters, is distributing them across the country. So what do these shelters do? They provide protection not only against shrapnel, but also against nuclear radiation and chemical fallout. This is a very clear message from the state to its citizens. If Putin says, everything is under control, why is he selling nuclear shelters to his people? Isn't this planting the fear of nuclear war in the subconscious of society? While victory marches play on state television, radiation shelters are being built quietly in the background. This contradiction is tearing the Russian people's psyche apart. Putin ordered 20,000 shelters to protect the people. Sounds like responsible leadership, doesn't it? But for those who know Russia, This decision carries another meaning: embezzlement. In fact, there is a critical question Russian citizens should be asking here. Will these billions of rubles really be spent on the people's safety? Or will they end up in the pockets of contractors close to the Kremlin? The answer is not hard to guess. Because in Russia, the construction sector has long been known as the biggest center of corruption. This is not an exception. It is the system itself. The budget for the Sochi Olympics was inflated sixfold. Hundreds of millions were stolen at the Vostochny Space Center. Contractors fled, and workers went months without pay. Even Putin himself angrily declared in front of cameras at the time, "Money has been stolen!" But no one went to jail. That's why analysts describe today's 20,000 shelter program as a wartime scam. Because war creates a kind of economic opportunity window in authoritarian structures like Russia. Controls are loosened, budgets are inflated, tenders are rushed, and no one is held accountable. Let's show how this system works, step by step. First, funds are transferred from Moscow to the regions. Each provincial governor, under the pretext of war urgency, bypasses competitive bidding and directly contracts with a company close to the Kremlin. These companies are usually shadow firms established by former KGB personnel or retired generals from the Ministry of Defense. Material quality is compromised. Labor costs are cut. Reports are embellished with the phrase, "digitally completed." In reality, thousands of shelters said to be renovated are merely painted over with rusty doors. Ventilation systems still do not work. Water systems are not installed. And the concrete reinforcement is of a standard from 40 years ago. So these structures are not for war. They are so rotten that they will collapse in an earthquake even in peacetime. Result: the shelters that should be built for the safety of the people exist only on paper. In reality, they are merely symbolic graveyards. The words "Civil Defense Facility" are written above the entrance doors. But anyone who enters smells death, not life. On the other hand, there is a much more critical problem that has been overlooked. You stole the money, you skimped on materials. So is there anyone left in this country to build those shelters? Target: 20,000 shelters. Required: concrete, iron, and people. Russia has concrete. It has iron. But it has no people. According to official data published by Izvestia, the Russian economy will need 12.2 million workers in the coming years. Today, Russia resembles not a huge construction site, but an abandoned pier. Because in the last 3 years, Russia's productive workforce has been swept away by war. 3 major waves wiped out the human resources that would form the backbone of the country. The first wave: mobilization. Approximately 1 million men were either sent to the front or lost their lives in the war. They were construction foremen, crane operators. Putin armed them with rifles instead of shovels and pickaxes. The second wave: brain drain. Engineers, architects, urban planners. They fled as soon as the war began. So even if a shelter design were to be drawn up today, the experts who could plan it properly are now outside Russia's borders. Third wave: migrant flight. And the Tajik, Uzbek, and Kyrgyz workers, the hidden driving force of the Russian construction industry. They also fled, fearing the collapse of the ruble and forced conscription. The crowds of Central Asians who used to mix concrete at 6 a.m. are no longer on the streets of Moscow. So who will Putin build these shelters for? The answer lies in a tragicomic reality revealed by United 24 media. Afghanistan. Yes, you heard right. Russia has begun talks with the Taliban to fill its labor shortage. Look at the irony of history. From the country where the Soviets fought a bloody war, the country Putin has accused of terrorism for years. Now they are trying to import laborers. Today, Putin wants thousands of shelters across the country to be renovated. But most of the hands that would pour concrete into those shelters are buried in Donetsk. This situation resembles the story of a snake eating its own tail. Shelters can protect from bombs. But what about the cold? When Putin ordered the construction of shelters, he forgot to heat existing homes. See the Moscow Times horrific report dated February 8th. In Belgorod, due to bombardments and infrastructure collapse, a full 80,000 people were left without heating in freezing temperatures. Think about it. It's minus 20 degrees outside. The heating in your home isn't working. And the state tells you, Don't worry if your home is cold, we're building you a shelter. It's cold there too, but at least it's concrete. Energy giant Russia can't heat its own citizens. What about kitchens? While Putin spends billions of rubles on 20,000 shelters, what's left in the pockets of the Russian people? According to Turk Russ's analysis, the concept of the middle class no longer exists in Russia. Now there are only new poor. In December we said, butter is being sold in locked boxes. The situation hasn't changed. According to Charter 97 reports, public employees and teachers in Siberia aren't getting their salaries. Images posted on social media are destroying Russia's superpower image. Pensioners are scavenging for food in trash. Mothers are taking out loans to buy milk for their children. Putin's lie that growth has slowed to maintain quality echoes in empty refrigerators. Charter 97's February 1st analysis summarizes the situation as, what the Kremlin fears has come true. The people no longer expect victory, they just want to survive. We must also mention another economic disaster here: mortgage loans. The Central Bank of Russia raised interest rates to 21% to curb inflation. What does this mean? It is now impossible for an ordinary Russian citizen to buy a house, buy a car, or take out a loan. The mortgage loan system in Russia has effectively collapsed. Young people have buried their dreams of home ownership. Today, the cost of buying a new home in Russia means a lifetime of slavery. While the people cannot find a home to lay their heads, the only new housing project the state has offered them is, unfortunately, these 20,000 shelters. Russia is not building living space for its citizens. It is building survival space. What about their spirits? How does the Russian people live in this climate of constant war and constant fear? There is a deep cognitive dissonance in Russian society. They turn on the television. Solovyov is shouting, "We took Kiev! We're marching on Berlin! We are a superpower!" They go out into the streets. There are air defense systems on top of buildings. Apartment basements are being converted into shelters. Russian children are being taught in school how to wear a gas mask. The people ask themselves, if we are winning, why are we hiding? The Russian people have become accustomed to the war, but this is not a healthy acceptance. It is learned helplessness. The famous kitchen talks of the Soviet era have returned. People cannot talk on the street, on the phone, or on social media for fear of imprisonment. But in their kitchens, they are probably cursing Putin, the war, and they're emptying wallets in hushed tones. If a state brings its citizens together in shelters, that state has failed to protect its citizens. Putin's promise of stability and security 20 years ago has now been replaced by a struggle for survival. People are going down into shelters, but they are not praying to Putin in those shelters. They are just waiting for this nightmare to end. In short, Russia is turning into an underground country for the sake of Putin's ambitions. Basements are being cleaned in Leningrad. Parking lots are being turned into shelters in Moscow. Villages on the border are being evacuated, while Flamingo missiles fly through the air, while 80,000 people freeze to death, and while there aren't even enough workers to build the shelters. Putin's dream of a greater Russia has been buried 7 feet underground. When this project is completed, those shelters will not protect the Russian people. They will be the memorial tombs of a future destroyed by the arrogance and mistakes of the Putin regime. For the Russian people, the symbol of 2026 is no longer the Kremlin's stars. It is the rusty iron doors of the shelters. Do you think these shelters are being built to protect the people, or to delay the inevitable end a little longer? I look forward to your comments. If you want to see how reality is shaped, not only on the front lines, but also in the darkness of shelters and empty wallets, subscribe to MrWARLOG. I'm Charlie from the MrWARLOG team. Stay safe and stay grounded.